Welcome to the Playlist Podcast, a weekly discussion of films and TV. I'm your host, Charles Barfield, managing editor of The Playlist. And for this episode, I'm joined by one of my regular co-hosts, Mike D'Angelo, as well as the Playlist editor-in-chief, Rodrigo Perez. Are you guys ready to talk about Black Falcon and his sidekick, Metal Arm Guy?
Better. That's a better title already.
It rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
So better. For this week's episode, we're going to focus discussing Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Finally, with the finale out now, we've watched all 6 episodes of the second Disney Plus series from Marvel Studios. And though it's less than 6 hours of TV, there's a lot to discuss when it comes to this series. But first, if you've somehow avoided the Marvel Studios marketing machine, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier picks up from the events of 2019's Avengers Endgame. In that film, Steve Rogers retires as Captain America and passes the shield to Sam Wilson, aka Falcon. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier then tells the story of what comes next as Sam Wilson wrestles with the idea of becoming the new Captain America, while his buddy Bucky Barnes, aka Winter Soldier, has to come to terms with his bloody past. All of this is happening as a new terrorist group known as the Flag Smashers starts to plan to disrupt the world's governments through the use of a resurfaced super soldier serum. So we're about to dive deep into the series, talk about the things we liked, the things we didn't necessarily care for, and the idea that somehow Marvel doesn't seem to know how to fully, truly satisfyingly deliver a TV finale. But before we do that, let's gotta tell you that the Playlist Podcast is part of the Playlist Podcast Network, which includes Be Real, The Fourth Wall, Deep Focus, and more. And if you want to find us, you can check your podcast app of choice, whether that's Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, or anywhere else you find your favorite shows. So before we get into the discussion, I want to warn listeners, we're going to assume you've already seen all the episodes of the series because it's pretty impossible to get really into the nuts and bolts of the Falcon and Winter Soldier without really spoiling stuff. So we're going full spoilers, guys. So with that warning out of the way, let's just jump into it by skipping to the end, because I want to ask you two what your thoughts are about the series after all the 6 episodes, and also tell me if you guys think Marvel Studios stuck the landing with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or is this the second Disney Plus series that followed the same formula as WandaVision by stumbling across the finish line? So we'll start with Rodrigo. What do you think?
I don't think it stuck the landing, and I was pretty mixed on that last episode. Some of the series I really liked. I think my favorite episodes were definitely episode 1 and 5. I think that in many ways, just like WandaVision, and just like a lot of maybe, Game of Thrones and a lot of prestige TV, is that the penultimate episode is where everything kind of really happens, and then the final episode, even though they do throw a lot of action and a lot of those things on it, it's a little bit of a fait accompli. Let me explain exactly. Like, the show is about, to me, I don't know how you guys see the show, and I'm curious how you guys see the show. To me, the show is mainly the emotional journey of Sam Wilson to accept the shield. And it's a burden. It's a whole thing. He turns it down at first. And then Bucky doesn't understand why he didn't. And Bucky's got his own issues, and he's got an emotional journey. But that emotional journey essentially comes to a close in episode 5, because he's finally like, for both of them, like he's finally like, okay, I'm going to do this. We see him practicing with the shield, all this stuff, but he's really come
his Rocky montage.
Yes. And he's been grappling, and he's been having a lot of these issues. But I loved episode 5, and I loved the way it was structured in that, like, you thought that, like, many people probably thought like the big showdown was him and John Walker at the end. And it's like, no, they put that right at the front. They got it out of the way, and then they got the shield, and they came back to the US. And the whole thing then, to me, locked right back to episode 1, and right back into those ideas of struggling with identity and legacy and all the stuff that, to me, that's the good stuff. That's the meat, the heart stuff that I loved about the show. And so then, by the end of it, even with, which I thought was really great, Falcon sort of teeing back to the Winter Soldier, Captain America one, where we first meet him. He helps at the VA with PTSD sufferers, and he's sort of helping Bucky in that way, and he's helping him come to his sort of like emotional journey of like, you got to get past this. You got to start trying to move forward, and you got to accept who you are. And yes, you have a dark past, and blah, blah, blah. all that stuff. So that basically, but it comes to an end at episode 5, and then we see him open the, the case, and we don't see him put on the costume till episode 6, but the journey is essentially kind of over. And then episode 6 is kind of like, then I put it on and I, do all this other stuff. And yes, he's got a great moment with Isaiah. That scene is really great. But they're, I think they're come to acceptance. They've come to terms in episode 5. So that's, to me, like, it's like, that's the climax. It's the emotional, apex of the series. And then everything from there, like WandaVision in a way. WandaVision was episode 5, and then episode 6 was just like the big,
you gotta do the smashy.
The Marvel movie.
Got a lot of smashy that's not that interesting for both of those episodes, right? Like the kind of letdowns, even though they, I think WandaVision had more potential to do more of an emotional ending. This one didn't really even have it so much, although so yeah, like I think the way they're structured in a way is episode 5, penultimate. We've seen that in Game of Thrones a lot, right? You'd always seen that the penultimate episode was the really, really big one. And then the final one, even if they did have action, there was a lot of aftermath, you know what I mean? Picking up the pieces, even thinking about the final finale of Game of Thrones, right? Like, them announcing who's going to be on the Game of Thrones, it's a quiet, it's aftermathy, right? It's like, so I think it's structured.
I try to forget that.
Brand.
Right. Yeah, well, but yeah. So
best story my ass.
Maybe it's a prestige television thing, but so yeah, did I explain? I think episode 5 is great, but that's kind of the true ending, and then they got to figure out how to make these final ones. I'm okay with that structure, like, but they still trying to have these big crescendos and these big action to-dos and smashy, like you said. And I don't know, the episode didn't really come together to me in any kind of big way, other than I think the best thing was the Isaiah thing, which I think we could get into, and the power broker thing.
Yeah.
A lot. And then everything else, not so much.
Mike, do you agree?
I agree in that it's kind of like a win some, lose some. The finale of it all, it's hard to stick the landing with this stuff, especially, this is their first attempts, or first, couple attempts at, a real series. And this one felt more like the movies than anything. But if I were to, set it up against the other Captain America movies, this would probably be my least favorite Captain America movie. Just because for me, I was missing like that Marcus and McFeely, like their writing was so solid, and how they tied everything back to the original all the time, and made sure that the themes really, really stuck, and the endings really worked, and the character journeys were like completely sold. And there were great moments on this show. Like, I loved a lot of characters. I felt like Sam's journey, obviously, it's the biggest part of the show. It's what makes this work for me ultimately is Sam's journey. I felt like Bucky's stuff is a bit, except for that moment by the fire where he's finally free of the programming. I didn't feel like he was that great in the show. I didn't love his character. Carly or Morgenthau, I don't know. I didn't feel she when she went like full malicious at the end, I just didn't feel like that was her, what they'd drawn us along to believe. But even that said, I still like a lot of the political and racial themes that they were touching on. It's great to see a Marvel project doing that, and so like blatantly. And there were a lot of great lines, having to do with that, especially in this last episode. But there were a lot of things that also just kind of fell flat. Like it was just like sloppy writing. Like, hey, is that Black Falcon? No, that's Captain America. Like,
I want to
really?
take you to task on that. I actually enjoyed that line.
I hated that moment.
I think people have been spoiled with the Marvel stuff in that it's so fucking good. Like, it's always good. And we forget that these are comic books and these are comic book characters, and they're allowed to say slightly cheesy things. They're allowed to have, 4-minute monologues talking about, the betterment of the world and stuff. I mean, I know the finale gets a lot of crap because the writing seemed kind of subpar compared to not just like other Marvel stuff, but just the series even. But I really the monologue that kind of gets crapped on a little bit with Sam fully accepting his Captain America role and speaking, to the world through the media and basically reprimanding the governments of the world.
I didn't mind that. I thought a lot of it was pretty great, especially
it was
Anthony Mackie's part of it. I mean,
yeah. And could they have done it in different ways? Could they have, maybe the show not tell of it all? Sure. But I didn't mind it. I thought this was kind of his like mission statement moment. This was him saying, you guys are used to Steve Rogers. This is me, Sam Wilson. I'm not Steve Rogers. I can't be. There's just no way. We've spent 5 hours discussing why I can't be Steve Rogers. So this is me kind of laying it all out there for the world, and I kind of dug it. That said, there were moments and throughout this series where I was just kind of like, okay. The mystery stuff of it, like the power broker stuff. I know Rodrigo liked that.
Power broker stuff did not land with me either.
Yeah, I could have done without power broker. I like Madripoor. I thought that was kind of cool as a nerd. I kind of like seeing that. Yes, and it gave us Zemo.
I do want a Zemo show. Like, I would completely watch just Zemo.
Zemo is great, right? Like, they took this guy who seemed one note in Civil War and kind of was like an afterthought in Civil War, and they gave him so much personality. I thought that was great. But this, I just, the finale's the finale. It was a lot of action. Having rewatched it, I noticed that I guess probably first 40 minutes of this show is just one big action scene. And that's a lot. And it's earned because you've spent 5 hours kind of building to it, but it was a lot. And then it kind of just all comes to a screeching halt as the sun rises, basically, and all these other, like, it's almost like Return of the King, where it was like ending 1, ending 2, ending 3, or the Snyder cut, if you want to be more relevant,
At least it didn't end like that one.
Yeah. At least.
I think, to your point about the action, I know that they've really tried to be like, one of the things that Marvel and Feige have said is like, these are, they've just kind of promised a lot, like this is going to be like a small screen thing. This is going to be the cinematic experience on TV and all this stuff. And they do that. But I really do think like how you said, 40 minutes, like they can dial the action back. You can tell, like, and I don't think people will be disappointed,
Yeah, the big moment of that finale was talking, like him talking.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, the climax. And honestly, that whole monologue is kind of terrible. Like it was
I liked it.
Really? I was just like,
I mean, it's very on the nose, right? Like,
so on the nose. And I felt it was, I mean, I think it was well intentioned and stuff, but I don't know. I was like, oof, this is so like spoon feeding everything and just going on and on. And I mean, I guess it, was like Charles said, I think you were saying that its intention was to establish who he is and what kind of Cap he's going to be and stuff. But just like, it was so, it was like, it was like probably the worst writing of the entire series.
Yeah. And yet through Anthony Mackie, I was like, that guy can sell me.
That is, yes. Like, I mean, I think that's kind of how I felt. I was kind of moved because we were seeing a Black Captain America, I was actually, wow, I was like kind of moved. And at the same time being like it had the benefit of this like kind of special kind of thing that we've never seen. And we're kind of like, it's, and I love the Falcon and I love Mackie and I was sort of moved by this kind of moment that like, wow, I'm just kind of like really happy for him as an actor, as a character, for the whole thing, that he's getting this moment. And at the same time, so it was like having this really strange, like I moved, and at the same time, I know this is really corny, and I'm having this very weird experience right now, grappling with the two of those things.
Yeah, the thing that Mackie's so good at, I think I think I've said this to you, Rodrigo, in chat before, but like, I think the thing that Mackie's so good at, he's the prototypical Marvel guy. He's got that movie star looks, he's got the build, he's got the charisma, and he can deliver a quip Like he's the total package. And so even when he is given kind of those cheesy lines, somehow he sells it. Like somehow it comes off sincere. So I mean, Lord knows that another person delivering that 4-minute monologue could have been, oh God, it could have just been like turn off the TV bad. But with him, you were kind of moved. You're like, this isn't great, but like he sells it. So that's good.
Yes, I think that's probably the best accurate way to describe it, because I was like, I felt like touched throughout a few moments of the episode, and at the same time not really liking it and thinking like it wasn't very well written. Although, I think the Isaiah stuff was genuinely very good for the most part.
I want to get into that actually, because a big part of this series was the introduction of Isaiah Bradley. We come to find out that Bradley is he was part of a post-World War II experiment where the government tested versions of the super soldier serum on Black soldiers to see if it could work. And most of them died. I think like almost all of them died except for Isaiah. And he was sent to prison for decades, I guess, like 30 years, he said. And then, they effectively killed him off to the general public. And he just kind of lives in Baltimore with his grandson. And it was a part that I guess it was being positioned as the heart of the show. And I want to know what you guys think is were they successful at delivering that story? Because it's a heavy story.
Yeah, for sure.
I think they 100% pulled off that part of the story. I mean, I'm trying to think of the actor's name.
Carl Lumbly.
Yes. I think he's fantastic. Like,
he was really good. He was really, really good.
He really sold that, like, you don't really know how old he is, but that's a guy who could probably punch a hole in the wall. Like, I dug it.
Yeah. The only thing that was a bit disjointed is that he did not want what he ultimately got in the end. At least he told Anthony Mackie in the second to last episode, he's like, I don't want anyone to know I'm alive. Like, I'm going to die. Give me a day and I'll be dead. And then all of a sudden he takes him to this museum. It's like, ta-da. But I mean, it was a beautiful moment.
Who did that sculpture is like the fastest sculptor on the face of the planet, because that was what, like a 24-hour turnaround time. That was incredible.
They had a mold.
Yeah, I know. And again, that's just it's Marvel, whatever. But Rodrigo, what did you think of Isaiah? Did you think it worked?
I have two feelings on it. One,
you actually read the comic too, pulling back the curtain.
I read the comic before the series ended, and I really, really liked it. And I think it was a great story, and I'm really, really glad that they borrowed from that and they adapted it for this, because there's some real power in that. On some levels, I wanted that to remain unresolved. I wanted in episode 5, Isaiah is basically like, fuck Captain America, fuck the government, and no respecting Black man is going to be Captain America. Like, and that's a hard moment, right? That's a hard moment for Sam. But Sam, and I think that's such a key kind of thing, is that, like, this his mentor, this sort of mentor, this person is telling him, like, look, this is a raw deal. This is fucked. You shouldn't do this. This is a bad road. Like, this is not going to be good. And no respecting Black men should do it. And Sam does it anyhow, because he just believes it's the right thing to do. And I think that's a really great writing thing. You know what I mean? It's not like the guy like pats him on the back and says, go, take it. He says, like, no, don't do it. And Sam does it anyhow. And that's a hard choice for him, but he believes it to be the right thing, the right moral choice, regardless. Which I think is very a Captain America thing, and very a Marvel kind of thing, like, making those difficult choices. And so in some ways, I really wanted that to just stay like that, and that Sam would have to sort of live with that. And the idea that, like, this guy is not giving his blessing, and Sam just has to live with that sort of echo in the back of his head for the rest of his days as Captain America, that this guy wasn't down with it. And I wanted it to stay like that. That said, the way they did it was quite beautiful, and it was moving. And, I kind of felt like, all right, they're really giving the way they're doing this. And the way Isaiah has come to accept it is a kind of beautiful tribute to Isaiah. And the idea, even though it's his fictional character and, all this stuff, is like, it really felt like, okay, they're really giving this guy his, it felt like this loving kind of effect. It was like almost like they were really treating him like a human being, like this would actually happen to him. and we wanted to give him a nice tribute and this sort of like affectionate thing, like a loving kind of like thank you, even though he is a fictional character, but like they took it really seriously. But that's also the problem, I think, with that ending, is everything just ends so neatly and perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. Again, it is a Marvel thing, so they are handicapped by that.
Yeah, but we have to stop giving them the excuse, oh, they're Marvel. You know what I mean? Storytelling is storytelling. You can do anything, and not everything has to end with a happy bow and neat and tidy. And as you were saying, actually, Charles, and you and I were having this conversation, like Bucky's ending isn't quite tidy. Like, he goes and tells that older Asian man that he killed his son, and it's the way it's depicted is kind of vague, but if you're really watching, you understand that doesn't end well, and and Bucky's no longer in his life, and he watches from afar at the restaurant.
I was really worried that the waitress was gonna like come out and be like, "You did a good thing, Bucky," but I'm glad they pulled back from that.
And like, no, like that did not end well. So in that way, it was not very neat, but at the same time, the way that they kind of glossed over that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so everything landed very neat. Isaiah fell into place. Everything Sam fell into place for Sam. Bucky, not really, but they glossed over it in a way that it did. And then the only one who got sort of a kind of complicated ending was the power broker, which is why I like that. I can't say that I like that mystery in the power broker thing, but
it's not a mystery.
Yeah. Well, no, but nobody knew it was her, right? Like, but they didn't set it up as a mystery. They didn't set it up as a thing to be solved. Whereas
as soon as she said she had satellites, it was like,
okay, yeah,
okay, power broker.
I kind of gathered when they first showed her apartment, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just kind of a art dealer." You're like, okay.
Sounds made
well, regardless, I don't think it was set up as the big mystery that in the way that WandaVision was, in a way, because you kind of knew that someone was pulling the strings in WandaVision and you wanted to figure that out. This was not geared towards figuring out who the power broker was. It was not the plot of the show. You know what I mean? It was a sort of side thing that happened, because even the power broker was not even the antagonist. It was the Flag Smashers, and they stole the stuff from the Flag Smasher, or from the power broker. So that was in the background. I just like how it ended for her, because I saw some people specifically online that were saying like, oh, they really screwed Sharon Carter over. And I think the exact opposite. I think like, wow, they've given us this great opportunity. They've really started to like do something complex and different, and for her. So I really like where they landed with her. Yes, he's no longer a good guy, but I totally buy giving her story, what happened to her, how she got fucked over, how she landed on being who she is now.
Yeah, I think that's the theme of this whole show, right? Like the whole show is about what happens when the government fucks you over. Sam Wilson gives back the shield, and they immediately give it to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy who's like mentally unstable. And they're like, "You're Captain America, not Sam. Thanks, Sam, black guy, for giving us this shield so we can give it to a good white person." And then you have the Sharon Carter thing. You have Isaiah, who's screwed over by the government in a major way. Then you have, you could go John Walker was betrayed by the government eventually. Even in Bucky, of course, was betrayed every which way because he kind of did a bunch of stuff. And so it was just betrayal. And it's every one of these people kind of reacts differently. And ultimately you have Captain America, Sam, who's like handles it the best. And he's like, yeah, you guys screwed me, but you know what? This is bigger than that. And I can't take it personally because I have to now carry this burden. Isaiah, I think, is like the next step down, where Isaiah says, yeah, they screwed me. I'm never going to recover. I'm an old grump. I'm not going to be happy, but you know what? You're the next generation, Sam. And I can see you doing it. He even says you're special, and
no Martin.
And even though he says, yeah, you're no Martin or Malcolm. But even though he says like, he's like, you almost got me believing that bullshit, it was him saying like, you almost got me, but I'm still not there. But also, how could you be a human and not be honored by the fact that you are now in like the Smithsonian or whatever? That's pretty cool. And then Sharon gets betrayed by the government, and she takes it the opposite way. She goes, no, fuck the government, fuck the US. I'm going to now use your secrets against you, make a lot of money, and disrupt everything. And I think that's fascinating because honestly, what are they going to do with Sharon Carter anyway? Her whole story revolved around Steve. Steve's gone. It's kind of just like,
but not even that. It's just sort of like, it's like it to me, it's a logical conclusion to her character. Her character is betrays the government to help out Captain America. Even if Captain America is, and then so then she's exiled. And yes, she knew that going into her choice, but experiencing it, living it is different. And then she has to struggle, go by, and then she's doing it in a post-blip world where everything's chaotic and really, really fucked up.
And she's in Madripoor.
Right. And you're kind of like, when that sort of happens, like the world kind of resets in a weird way, right? And like all bets are off. It's kind of the perfect time to change your identity anyhow. She's screwed. She's got no other options. And she goes to Madripoor because it's a good place to hide. Kind of makes sense what happens to her, right? And then it makes sense that she's bitter and angry and all this shit, and that she's done what she's done. Like she's got to survive, right? And there's no way to survival for her on any kind of like up and up is impossible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it stands to reason. Yeah, this person is really smart, knows all this shit anyhow, right? What else are you going to do it? What are you going to use it for, right? You're going to use it for something, and then she takes it even further with, the super serum and all that stuff. I know I also saw some other people saying, because of all that and everything that you just described, the government screwing over people, and there's terrorists, there's like nationalists, there's this whole thing. Like people are like, this show's politically all over the fucking map. And I would kind of say, like, I don't know, yes and no, but like, it's like, this shit's always going to be complicated, right? Like, it's never going to be neat and even when you have, when you're trying to create this believable world. Like, think about it. If there was any superheroes now, right? Charles, you're frozen?
No, I'm good.
Oh, if there was any superheroes in the world now, there would be so much oversight. There'd be so much accountability. There's so many people getting arrested, all this shit. So that tension and that kind of like back and forth is always going to be there, I think. Yeah. And I don't think it's going to ever easily be resolved. And I don't think it should be, because if you're going to try and do it believably, it's either like they literally just shut everybody down and there's no superheroes, or they create some sort of leeway, and there's these issues with Sokovia and the Sokovia Accords, and I don't see how these shows can exist on a political way without some kind of like constant tension all the time. Otherwise, again, the only thing is you can say, if this is really, really, really believable, everybody just has to essentially like work for the government and or be arrested. There would be no, and then there's no superheroes, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to allow for some sort of suspension of disbelief or leeway in the idea of the government and the sort of gray area of all this stuff. So
I want to ask you guys about John Walker too, because he's kind of that gray area, right? Like he comes in, he wants to be Captain America, he accepts all this, he's given the shield, he has the training, and his story is pretty well telegraphed. I mean, my wife watched it with me, and she knew, like, the second she saw him, she's like, yeah, this isn't gonna work out. So what did you guys think? Did you think that this was a worthy motivator to bring Sam back, or did they not stick the landing with Walker?
I like that they didn't make him an out and out bad guy.
They
embraced him. Yeah, they embraced the gray area of the character, who is very much that way in the comics. Which is, I mean, it's complicated, but that's what makes it really interesting. If he was just all bad or all good, then it would have just been boring. But he has a lot of really complex, emotional like scenes in this where you're like on his side sometimes, and then you're like, oh, he's off the deep end. So I like that you get to wrestle with that character, and they've done a really good job in this series, and even WandaVision, of making characters that have more depth and gray to them. The Power Broker being one of them.
They're able to introduce John Walker and kind of give him a complete story without devoting 2 movies to him, which, we don't need US agent movies, but it's good that they brought him in this.
But Wyatt Russell is fantastic. Like,
he really is
so good in this role.
He's really good in everything.
Yeah, that's true. He really is.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think people's tendencies are to be like, is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? What's the idea? People like buckets, but I like everything. I agree with what you said. Like, I think they did a good job. I think it was obviously very necessary with this sort of race play, the way Sam gets fucked over and they gave it to him. I mean, that's such a smart writing decision. Like, how do you want to start the show about whether Sam wants to take the shield or not? like those breadcrumbs lead you like, oh, that's a really good choice of being like, yeah, well, he turns it down, but then they give it to fucking John Walker, this blonde blue guy. That's so loaded, that's so charged. And it seems like, yeah, that just seems like something that the American government would do.
Yeah.
So and a lot of that stuff I just really liked, because they're always working in this way that they're trying to make things like that. There's that realism to it, like, you know, it's obviously fantasy, and it's you know, these implausible things, but it's always grounded with some sort of plausibility. Like you go, yeah, oh, okay, that totally makes sense that they would try and fuck him over like that, you know, that they did him dirty at the end of episode 1 big time, you know. And yeah, so I don't know, but Walker, I didn't really like the way his story ended, though. I didn't like him being I didn't like him joining them all of a sudden, and there was them being his buddies all of a sudden. And at the same time, I get it, because in the heat of action, they're just kind of like, okay, well, I guess we need him, right? Like, there's no time to discuss.
He's just there.
The step
on
too
his own
far
volition,
for me. Yeah, the step too far for me was the Bucky Lincoln line thing, when they both just like, he basically like quipped, and it was just like, oh, we're best buds now, and it was like,
But Bucky
no,
shuts him down. He like shuts him down right away.
but not really, because, you know, I like the idea that he struggled with the idea of like, do I go after Carly, or do I save this truck full of people? And he pulls him back, and that's really cool. I think it speaks a lot, and that was enough, I think, in my mind, to just say, okay, he was a pawn in all this too, and his best friend just died. Like, he didn't ask for this, and well, or you could say, I guess he did.
He wasn't equipped for it.
No, he wasn't, and
he was a good soldier, but not necessarily the best man for the job.
Right, and I think by having him save the truck full of people was a good thing. I didn't need him to give the line and be like an aw shucks moment. I thought the end with him and Valentina, which we'll get to in a bit, I think that was great too, because it showed that he's kind of just a dork, or like a doofus, and he was just this kind of soldier who was given this, like, you know, fame and fortune and instant icon status, and he got screwed out of it basically in his eyes, and now he
did what they taught him to do.
Right. Well, I don't know if they would have taught him to murder a guy in a town square, but, like, you know,
he kind of alludes to some terrible stuff that they did to earn those medals.
Well, so did Steve. I mean, when in First Avenger, we gloss over all of his World War II battles, but he was carrying a gun and going into warehouses too, you know, like, he killed people, but they were just Nazis. So it was,
but when he did it, it was fun.
Yeah. The music was fun. The music was fun.
About the show, right? What is another thing that's interesting is that like the world is more complicated now. The battle that Steve Rogers was fighting back then against the Nazis was pretty simple. Like, you know, these people wanted to fucking, you know, killing millions of people. They were like trying to take over the world. It was simple, you know, it was easy to root for this man. The world is now much more complicated, and the ideas of being a hero and what it means to be a hero is completely different.
Now every country has a little bit of a portion that
and there's a whole
fighting nationalism.
Even Sam, like, you know, talks about that he believes in Carly's fight, but he doesn't believe in the way she's fighting it. And there's all that kind of stuff that I think is interesting. You know, it feeds into that idea of that it's hard to be a superhero. I mean, I think thematically, I really love the show. I love everything that it's trying to talk about and discuss. I just don't think that it perfectly quite did it all that well. Like, I mean, it just doesn't come together in the end all that. There's just some of the stuff that's just too on the nose. The John Walker thing I think was really interesting, was the I'm back, you know. I thought
he sees Valentina as like a good person just trying to give him, you know, another shot.
I thought that was interesting because it was sort of ironic in a way that he's not aware of. Like, he's like, yeah, I'm back, everything's great, but it's not. Like,
no,
he's like, you know, he is kind of a dumbass in that way, but to him it's something, it's some way forward to continue in some kind of role. But, like, you know, obviously she's gonna
use and abuse them even worse.
Yeah. There's something coming
So,
down.
so Rodrigo, you mentioned that, thematically the show is strong, but maybe the execution in various areas just didn't quite connect the dots how you wanted it to. So we are now done with 2 full Marvel series. We've seen WandaVision and we've seen Falcon and Winter Soldier, and both are kind of like polar opposites in a lot of ways, showing that Marvel's going to do this and that and kind of do a little bit of both. So now that we have 2 under our belts, what are you more or less excited for Loki and Hawkeye and Ms. Marvel, or are your anticipation tempered a little bit?
I think my anticipation is tempered, not because these shows weren't great, but I'm just like not looking forward to having to deal with like another Marvel series and another one. I think it's becoming.
It's a lot.
It's becoming.
I'm all for it. I'm just like, more. Give me Loki next fucking week.
I think it's too much, and I think we're gonna see. I'm predicting that we're gonna see one of the first. We haven't really had a Marvel backlash since like the last time I think anybody really thought something Marvel was bad, or collectively critics and fans, the consensus. I think it was like Thor 2 was the last.
I would say Ultron.
World. I liked Ultron.
I would say Ultron though, because you even had Joss Whedon going out there and being like, this movie kind of sucks.
I'm for it.
Yeah, I think
I mean, it's still $1.5 billion. I was just saying, like, it's.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember at the time like knocking Ultron and giving it like a C+ or something like that. But now I think it's a lot better than that. I still think it's got its problems. It's not amazing, but I think Thor 2 came after.
Yeah.
So Thor 2 is like I think the last time that everybody can pretty much agree, like, yeah, that's kind of a stinker, right? And so they've had nothing but like what most people would perceive as hits and wins, right?
Yeah, because it had that post Avengers bump where it made a ton of money, but it just wasn't very good.
I mean, if you look at it by phases, phase 3, which I think we can say is probably the strongest set of superhero movies of the entire MCU. Like, we got some real big ones there, and ending with Endgame and Far From Home, it was kind of like a perfect ending. It was like a whole story. But yeah, I agree. I think I'm not necessarily super psyched about Loki. I enjoy Marvel stuff. I'm not gonna, deny that, but like, it is a lot, and it's not ending. Like, we're getting, like, we're saying that Loki's what in I guess June. But even in May, like,
there's going to be 6 series this year.
Yeah.
And
well, I was going to say, like, MODOK, even if you don't even want MCU stuff, MODOK's coming to Hulu in May. Like,
that would be 7. That would make it 7.
Yeah.
That would be 7 in total with shows. And then you'd have 3 movies, right? You're going to have Black Widow
in like 4 months
and Spider-Man 3, right? That's all that's coming this year.
Shang-Chi.
So 4 movies, 7 series. That's a lot, man.
4 movies in half a year.
Yeah,
July through December.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
if you would have told like 12-year-old me that, I would have been like, oh my God, can I time travel? So I'm not complaining.
I mean, I think we're gonna see some stumbles, and I think we're gonna see some kind of like tuning out. Although this one's interesting because, I mean, WandaVision clearly grabbed the zeitgeist in a way that, like, been a big way. Like, seemed to be just as much as The Mandalorian. It was the biggest hit on Disney Plus, and this one did not at all. And yet, Disney said, well, that moment sort of, but but Disney said that the first episode was the biggest watch series in all of Disney Plus history, over all of WandaVision, over all of Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. And so what does that tell us? Does that tell us that, like, I mean, and yes, that's true. Is that kind of disconnect between, like, yes, just because everybody's talking about it on social media and everybody's going wild about WandaVision, maybe the reality is that, this thing that some of people, like even myself, were like, this is a little bit more traditional MCU. Maybe that's what the overall aggregate of, people want, not people who are on social media, maybe just like dudes or whatever who like at home, and like, so maybe it was a big hit because of that. I don't know. And then again, those things are hard to sort of trust in a way, like, because they just say
we can't trust anything the studios say. I mean, they control the narrative and the numbers. I mean,
like, why would they say that if it?
Here's what I'll say. There are a couple things, if you want to get nerdy on numbers for just a brief moment. you're getting more and more people every month on Disney Plus. So saying that something was more popular than it was in January is just like, well, no shit, because there's like 20 million more people watching. So, you know, okay, yeah, but since you don't give me numbers, or you don't give me like a percentage of subscribers who tuned in sort of thing, like an apples to apples comparison, whatever. The
They're
only
all
way that
benefiting from the work that WandaVision and Mandalorian have already done.
Well,
like, that's
or
why
the Disney
big.
brand,
yeah, exactly. It's
but
just,
we're not going to know anything. It's just like Netflix. The only way to know if something's a hit or not is if there's a second season, which leads me to my next question, which is, where does it go? Because this series ends with the title card, which I predicted, which is pretty obvious, but it was Captain America and Winter Soldier, right? And you're immediately thinking like, well, that's season 2. And then Marvel lets slip, or the reports, the trades, whatever, report that, oh no, we're going to do Captain America 4, and we're going to bring Malcolm Spellman from Falcon and Winter Soldier over to co-write with Dalen Moosen, who
he wrote up 5.
Yeah, well, he also did Iron Sky, if you guys didn't know.
Okay.
Remember that?
I mean, that doesn't thrill me, but cool.
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, so 2 guys from this show are going to go and write the script for Captain America 4, which we have to assume is following the story of Sam Wilson, not Chris Evans. Chris Evans probably won't show up. Maybe they'll throw him in there just to juice sales, whatever. Maybe Sebastian Stan. But now that we've seen the prequel, are you guys amped for Captain America 4?
I mean, the thing I was thinking upon the rewatch that I was doing today is, man, I wish this was like a tight 2.5 hours instead of having all that breathing room that we had. It might have been a better movie than a series.
Well, because then you have to cut Power Broker and stuff like that, maybe.
Yeah, I would have been so down with that. But I mean, I didn't mind it, but I didn't need it. But yeah, I definitely, I mean, the Captain America trilogy is my favorite, but I really wish that Marcus and McFeely had at least some input there. I'm not saying don't give it to the guys that are doing the show. I think they definitely should, but
I mean, I get the reason why they're giving it to the guys who do the show.
Oh, absolutely. Me too.
It's also like, I don't, like you were saying, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was your least favorite Captain America movie. And I don't agree with that in the way that it's just a different thing.
Yeah.
I don't think you can rank them in that way. I mean, sure, you can rank all the Marvel movies, but the Captain America movies are Captain America. This is a different character, a different person, different thing. To me, this starts like, even if they call it Captain America 4, which I'm sure they won't, to me, it's almost like the beginning of it's a new trilogy or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's its own thing.
It's its own thing. It's his own character. He's a different person. It's a completely different thing. I was slightly surprised for them to announce Captain America 4 or the story, whatever, but
I think they had to.
Well, in some ways, because I was thinking, they could probably just do another series, but they promised this, right? They said that we're going to have series that goes into movies and movies go into series and this kind of thing. So you could conceivably do
Zemo and the Winter Soldier.
You could conceivably do a Captain America 4, which is essentially Captain America, Sam Wilson #1, right?
Yeah.
And then that could also lead into the Falcon and the Winter Soldier season 2. Like it could be, and so you could do the Cap 1 or whatever, this Sam Cap 1, and that's a movie, and it's probably him, and it probably doesn't have Bucky, and maybe you bring in Joaquin, right, and then have a little story there.
Can we talk about how great he was, just even in the snippets we caught of him?
Yeah,
he was good,
fantastic.
Right? And then you could still dovetail back to season 2, because they said they were going to try and do this thing. These things feed into it. So on that level, I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But from a story level, I was like, it wasn't the first thing that jumped out at me. I really thought that they would probably announce. But then again, here's the other thing. I was thinking like, okay, maybe this is where you do all the Thunderbolts. And it's
exactly. Is this Captain America versus the Thunderbolts, or what is it?
Yeah, maybe a whole thing like that. And then it becomes, which they're doing with all these fucking movies, it's a Captain America movie, but maybe it's going to be more along the lines of like Civil War.
Yeah.
And it's Cap, Sam, and you got Bucky, and you got New Falcon, and maybe you got somebody else, and it's against the Thunderbolts.
Patriot.
It becomes a big thing, right? Maybe even John Walker's on their team or whatever it is, and it becomes that's kind of what they do with these movies. You know, they're starting to become. Every one of them is like a mini Avengers, like little thing. Like look at Thor 4, that's fucking huge. Doctor Strange has the next Doctor Strange has Doctor Strange, Wanda, and American Chavez.
Yep.
They're building little things. Even Thor Ragnarok was, to me, in some ways, I used to always say Thor Ragnarok was the beginning of that, because that was a big team, right? It was like Thor, the Hulk, Loki,
Valkyrie,
Korg. Yeah, and that was their team, right? But then when you think about it, that goes back all the way back to Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier was Cap, Nick Fury, Black Widow, right? So that was you know, they've been, and then Falcon, right? Because Falcon's in it. So that's four heroes total in Winter Soldier. So it kind of goes back to Captain America's The Winter Soldiers when they started doing that. They started eventizing these things and making, like, you know, a whole. Yes, it was a movie about that character, and they always do that, and they thread that very well. But they put a whole supporting cast of a team there around it. I think Winter Soldier became the model, and then they kept doing that. They did it. They very much did it in Ragnarok, and it seems like that's what they're doing and everything. So at first I was like, I don't know if Sam's ready for his own movie yet. But then I thought, oh, if they do it like that and they do it with Thunderbolts, boom, big event.
Well, so here's my thing. I think they had to announce either season 2 or a movie like ASAP, because they're doing, you know, pull back a curtain a little bit. They're doing another round of media blitz on this show now that it's wrapped up. And that's going to be the question on everybody's mind is, well, where's Sam going next? So they had to have something. They had to have some answer for that. But also, my question for you guys now is, we've have this 6-episode prequel series to Captain America 4. Obviously not everybody's going to watch this show before they go to Cap 4. So are they just hoping that, you know, that Cap 4 is going to be another reintroduction? Or are we just going to say, like, for people who didn't watch the show, Sam Wilson at the end of Endgame took up the shield, got a new suit, and bam, we're off?
I think at some point people are going to be watching these shows, man. Like, these are mega popular, and like, and also
that's a big ask, though, right?
Marvel's got it.
Yes,
and they got people on the hook.
And let's say you don't watch any of this series, right? But you're really into the movies, but for whatever reason, you're just not really enough to watch all the series. If you're not into the movies, and Cap 4 comes out, let's say 2023, that's plenty of time to be like, before it comes out, like, okay, maybe I have not even watched one Marvel Disney Plus series in that time, and all I've done is watch movies. I'm probably gonna catch up on Captain America and the Winter Soldier to see what happens. That's not a big ask, like, because that's for years, right? Like, when was that gonna? 2023 at the earliest, 2024, like, you know, these things, like, most of it's already mapped out. So
that, and look at Civil War as like a blueprint. Like, there was it's a movie that stands alone, but there's a ton of stuff going on in there that's calling back and expecting you to just be kept up as far as the ongoing MCU saga goes. So they're pretty good at making sure that the fans get their extra bits. But if you're just walking into this movie, it's going to make sense. So
look at even they do on Disney Plus now, right? Where they do those legends or whatever those things, those series where it recaps everything, and it tells you, like, you know, like, here, in case you forgot, like, here's basically the story of this person up until this point.
Are they going to start showing those like Pixar shorts in before Marvel movies?
Yeah, maybe.
I wouldn't even put it past them. I think it would be genius. Actually, they should. You mentioned the Thunderbolts, so I think we need to talk about that as, you know, another thing that kind of was teased in this show outside of the new Captain America, which is at the end of the series, like we said, John Walker is redubbed U.S. agent by Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, or Val, as her friends call her. She gives a card and says, "I'll be calling you for ... something," right? If you're a fan of the comics, you just put it together like, oh, she's probably recruiting some sort of Dark Avengers / Thunderbolts team. So that said, there are also rumors, this isn't a spoiler because it's all speculative, that she'll show up in Black Widow, and, you know, we'll see her as kind of, they even called her the darker Nick Fury. So
Yeah, right there, that connotes like
Mhm.
she's putting together something. I mean,
Right. So
pretty
where are we going to see Thunderbolts?
well,
That's a good
whatever it is,
question.
and maybe it's not going to be Thunderbolts, maybe it's not going to be Dark Avengers or whatever, but they're building to something. Let's face it.
Oh,
And they're showing,
absolutely.
and this is what they do. Like, you know, so people always say, like, in some ways that they go, oh, these shows are just like a setup for this. And I'm like, I don't think so. Like, I think that, like, again, for the Falcon and Winter Soldier was a story about legacy and identity, and this guy's emotional story of coming to terms with who he's supposed to be in this. That's what it's about. It's not about setting up something else. What they do is sow seeds, and that's completely fine.
Yeah.
They've done that throughout the history of Marvel. In Age of Ultron, they show fucking Claw, Ulysses Claw, and
Mhm.
it's Age of Ultron a setup for Black Panther? No, it's a thing. They use this character, and it's a seed, right? And it comes into fruition later. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. So when people say these things are, oh, this is just a setup for this other movie, I'm like, I mean, sometimes that can be true in superhero movies. I don't think that's the case here at all. Like, some things happen, and yes, but they're sowing seeds. And so I think with a lot of this stuff, I don't think Thunderbolts are going to appear anytime soon. I think another seed's going to pop up here and another one there, and you're going to see John Walker. He's the first one that's come up, and then Val, and then something will come down the road. Maybe we'll see Thunderbolt Ross in Black Widow, and maybe that'll percolate something that could be another possibility, and maybe another character shows up. And
Zemo's already chilling.
right, Zemo's chilling in jail. So these things. And it's like Young Avengers is the same thing. We're starting to see seeds of these characters. It's not like these things aren't setting up a Young Avengers movie. It's just the seeds. We've had America Chavez is coming. We've
Cassie.
had Cassie is coming. Who have we seen? We saw
Eli Bradley.
Eli Bradley
showed up for a minute. And even for the few seconds that he's in, I was like, oh, this kid's handsome. He's like, he seems to be built. I'm like, okay, I could see that. I could see that going somewhere.
His agent is also on the phone with Marvel. Like, he's ready to go. Let's do it.
Right. And so was there any other ones that have been?
Well, we're getting Kate Bishop, obviously.
Bishop, right. So they're going to be doing those things, but that's still going to take time, right? Like, that's going to be like 2 or 3 years. And then that comes to fruition later. Like, you're not going to, I mean, I know a lot of people are going, oh, we're going to get a big Young Avengers movie. I'm like, yeah, maybe 2024 or 2025. Like, it's like they slowly introduce these people. We get them, and then something happens. I mean, Ant-Man 3 doesn't even have a date, right?
I don't know if it has a date or a specific time, but
I think we all know it's 2023 because everything else is full. So, so you just think about it, that like a lot of these things are just not going to come immediately. They're just introduced and seed sown. And so that's what I think is going to happen with whatever turns into, whether it's Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers, that
should it be a series or a movie? What do you think?
I think that it'll probably culminate in a movie. Like, you'll get every one of these characters to pop up over the next 2 years or whatever, and then maybe by the end of 2022, maybe like the team that would be the team, even if they're not a team yet, the people that that would be in there have been all introduced in the MCU. They're all there, and then maybe 2023 is when Cap 4 comes out, and that's kind of perfect, right?
Yeah,
I do these things. It's like,
it
just seems like like that's how they do it. Like, and let's face it, they already did that from the very beginning. It was Iron Man, Cap, Hulk, and then big movie, right? Like, that's what they do. Introduce everybody. You get a moment to know them, and then sometimes they'll be like in the introducing of the next one, that one that you met earlier, like the way Iron Man shows up at the end of Hulk or whatever. Like, you get that a little bit, these people. So, but that's essentially how it works. And I think it's worked really well for them, obviously. Like,
they're doing all right.
Yeah, they're doing okay. So,
I mean, if you take the Thunderbolts concept from the comics, like the original Thunderbolts concept, which is led by Baron Zemo, where it was Zemo and his Masters of Evil decide to be fake superheroes because the world doesn't have an Avengers anymore, and they use it as a way to like kind of ingratiate themselves into the public. You could see, like, we don't have a quote unquote Avengers anymore because of Endgame, and just, it's kind of disbanded. There's not even a place for them. I could very well see a Thunderbolts movie being that sort of idea of like, here are these characters, these B characters, Yelena from Black Widow, and
That's another-
John Walker and all these people, the new Avengers, right? And then everybody's just like, kind of like how they reacted to John Walker in this, or like, this isn't right. And then, that could lead into something. So I wouldn't be
I
shocked.
see them getting their own movie, like good guy, like their own,
like a Suicide Squad type.
Yeah, I don't see them getting their own movie. I see them being like the like a central part of a Cap movie or something like that. Even if they're not the bad guys, even if it's not, maybe it's similar to Winter Soldier, whereas like, because Winter Soldier in a way was a triangle, right? It was, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it was Power Broker, Flag Smashers, and the good guys, right? It was a bit of a triangle. Like it could be a similar thing where it's like Sam and whoever, then the some real antagonist, and then the Thunderbolts trying to be good guys but complicating the whole thing. Like it could go down in that kind of way.
So we mentioned Eli and Joaquin. These are characters, again, Marvel now has gotten to the point where they just tease you by saying like, okay, we're going to bring in Joaquin Torres. We don't know if we're going to use him in the future, but
keep him.
Yeah.
No, that's going somewhere when he told
Well, but eventually, we assume that, they've got to put like 7 shows out a year that has to do something. So do you guys think that we got more Joaquin Torres coming and Eli Bradley, or is this just one-off, like, like Rodrigo said, just sowing some seeds and seeing what happens?
They know where they're going. But at this point, I think they've learned to not just sow seeds for the sake of sowing seeds. If they're putting it in there, they're doing it purposefully. So you can bet that Young Avengers and Thunderbolts are going to pop up, and you can bet that he's going to be the new Falcon in the new Cap movie or whatever it is. So I don't think that would be surprising at all. I would be surprised if it didn't go somewhere. That's just poor storytelling at that point.
Yeah. I think the way like Feige sets it up, though, I think he's being honest. It's like, we'll see how this goes. He's never commits to anything. And I think that's kind of the right way to do it. It's like, you're going to introduce these characters, and then the idea is ideally you want to go into a Young Avengers movie or whatever. But they don't kind of commit to it right away because they kind of want to see how it all pans out and how people take to some of these characters and stuff. And that seems pretty genuine to me in a way, maybe,
but it always goes their way. Like,
yeah, I mean, so far, I mean, but I don't know, things have changed for them, even though, they tried to introduce Black Panther way early and that didn't happen. They tried to
Captain Marvel.
Yeah. A lot
they filmed Captain Marvel in Ultron.
Yeah, the plate for her, yeah.
And Wasp even, didn't they?
I don't know.
Or I think she's part of the script or something. Like,
yeah, something like that. They've had things where they decided, Black Panther was going to be introduced way earlier. I think they tried to introduce Doctor Strange way earlier, and
they mentioned him. Yeah,
Inhumans was something that they tried to do with the movie, and then they decided not to.
That wasn't a Feige thing, though.
No.
I think Feige has, I don't know if he's gone on record as saying this, but I think he's hinted at that was the Ike Perlmutter era where he was like, we're going to make Inhumans a thing. And he's like, I don't know. And then they split up Marvel and Marvel Studios. And that's when you saw Inhumans go to ABC. Right. And Feige's like, screw the TV show. So,
yeah. But it's not like everything that they said, like them. You remember they tried to do a Runaways movie. And that didn't work. And then they decided to, I think this is what happened because I think they tried to do a Runaways movie. He didn't like the script, and they decided to and then he gave it to Ike, and then Ike put it on Hulu, right? Or Jeff Loeb and those guys put it on Hulu. And I think Inhumans was the same way. They put a script together for Inhumans because he did announce a movie. You remember that time when they announced that, like, that was the
and Vin Diesel was going to be Black Bolt, or he wanted us to believe that.
Yeah. But they did announce it. Do you remember the logo and the whole thing, and had a release date and everything?
Yep.
And that didn't happen, and I think that was because like that script is like they were like, oh, we're not sure about it, and then Ike's like, well, then I'm gonna take it or whatever,
Yeah, and they never even started planting seeds for that one.
Right.
I don't think he had any faith in it.
No, I honestly don't either. And so not having faith, let's talk about the future just in terms of the TV series. Rodrigo thinks that one of these series coming up is going to be a bomb. I want you guys to tell me which
bomb,
relative bomb.
I think
which one do you think it's going to be? Which one is going to hit with a thud?
Could be Hawkeye.
I think Mike just hates Hawkeye, which is funny because now we finally have Rodrigo here to defend Hawkeye.
I don't really want to defend Hawkeye anymore. I used to be a big Hawkeye fan, and I used to like root for the underdog kind of thing, but I really didn't like.
And then you heard Jeremy Renner's music.
If they really, yeah, exactly.
I saw his app, then I heard his music, and I had sick of defending him. And
if they really stick to the Matt Fraction stuff, I think it could be interesting. But we'll see. We'll see. It's that and Miss Marvel are probably the ones I'm looking forward to. I think Loki looks great. I'm in the bag for that.
See, Loki, I think, is the bummer.
I think
I enjoy the trailer. I think Owen Wilson is always fun, you know. But I think that of all the series, that feels the most like inconsequential. Like if I'm gonna skip one, that's the one I'm gonna skip.
I think you're gonna miss so much.
I think that could be the case. Like I think so many hardcore Marvel fans are so excited for Loki, and I think Loki might be the one that doesn't really hit with like mainstream audiences who don't feel like they need to watch it because it's not in continuity. It doesn't really affect anything that's going on. And
I don't know. Like my sisters are really excited about Loki. That's because they love Tom Hiddleston and everything, all these movies. I mean, he really captured like the general public, this Loki character. So I think he might have some.
Super charismatic. I am not interested in the story so much. I'm kind of just like, but I'm not against it. I'm just sort of like, I don't know what this is going to be. It seems like this multiverse weird kind of, it seems like it's a little bit
Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's also a little it's just
timey-wimey,
like nerdy, very like very Marvel-y in Marvel, like, you know, the rabbit hole-y kind of like some like I'm could, if it's good, it's good. I don't care. But from the outset, I'm kind of like I like the idea because I think you're right. Everything you said about Tom, he's so charming. He has captivated people. But I'm just like him in another realm, and I don't know. Maybe it'll be interesting, but yeah.
The bummer is that this is the one with like Gugu and Badara and Owen Wilson, and I'm sure there are other A-listers we don't even know there's going to show up in it. And it's like that's the one where I, you know, you said your sisters are into it, Mike. My wife saw it and it was like, meh, whatever. You know, she's like, I'll watch it because you'll watch it. And I was like, well, yeah, I kind of have to. But that's the one again. I can't muster up the enthusiasm for like I can for a Hawkeye or Ms. Marvel.
I'm also not saying like bomb in the way, but I'm thinking like people maybe after a while, like again, we just said 4 movies and maybe let's say 6 stories. Yeah, like a fatigue that's going to come in, and then also it just become a kind of sameness in that. Let's say Hawkeye rolls around, and let's say put it this way. If Hawkeye is as good as Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's going to be seen as worse, right? Because it's going to be how many shows later?
Yeah.
How many movies later? Hawkeye's not going to come out to December. So if Hawkeye is exactly the same quality as Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it will be seen as the worst thing of all of this year because it's going to be the last of all of them, right? And people are going to be, you know what I mean? So unless something before it is even worse, but if it's that same quality 7 or 8 projects later is, you know what I mean, it's going to fatigue people, and they're going to go when on its own merits maybe it's not really that bad, maybe it's okay enough, as same as Falcon, but because of saturation, that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of things, if they are not top notch, by the time the 10th thing comes around, people are going to be like, you know what I mean? So I think you're going to see a lot of that where people aren't looking at them on their own merits of whether it was good or not. And more like I've seen 11 Disney Plus Marvel shows now. And I'm starting to get, you know, it's starting to feel all the same or whatever, you know, just because of that. I think that's how people are going to react to.
As long as they give everything its own identity, they have a shot at making it out of this year alive. But
you could argue that Marvel doesn't. You could argue that Marvel doesn't have a good track record of giving everything its own identity. We look with rose-colored glasses because we see like WandaVision and we're like, ooh, that's so unique. But like that's an anomaly, right? Like this was very much Cap 3.5, and you know the tone is very similar to Marvel things of the past, even though maybe it's a little different in terms of the politics. But I mean, at some point, I doubt there's going to be a lot in Ms. Marvel, let's say, that's going to differentiate itself from a Hawkeye or Falcon or.
Well, that's like a teen adventure, so that has
it
has potential to be its own thing.
there's the patina of Marvel that sort of invades everything, but then you do get a lot of sort of subgenres in stuff, right? Like WandaVision was different. It was very, it was this sitcom-y thing or whatever. It was very different. And then you got this thing that was more sort of like harkening back to Civil War and Winter Soldier, much more traditional. And they were actually going to start, that was supposed to kick off the Disney Plus in a way, because I think it was sort of safe. I think like WandaVision to them might have been like, this is a little too risky as a starter, and look at how it paid off, right? So like the risks do kind of pay off in that way. But to that end, Loki could be totally radically, really, at least in relatively radically different from, it seems like Loki looks completely different than both those two
shows. Does look to have its own feel for sure.
And I'm assuming, like you said, Miss Marvel is going to be a teen show. Hawkeye is going to be this thing with, Kate Bishop. I think they're probably going to give more of it to Kate Bishop than him, because of all the sort of, you guys have probably heard some of the rumors about his character and the direction that they go in and stuff. So like, yeah.
And Haley Steinfeld's the future. Come on.
Of everything.
She's good in Bumblebee. I haven't watched this stupid Apple Plus TV show though, so I don't know. But yeah. Okay, I think we've about exhausted our Marvel talk for the night. I want to thank Rodrigo for joining us and nerding out like you do. And thank you, Mike, for joining us as well. And thank you, Zemo, for staring at Mike's head the entire time.
And thank you for dancing the way you did. It became a meme for us.
It was delightful.
That's the thing. Okay, just real quick. Every show now has to have a meme. Every Star Wars has to have a Baby Yoda. Every Marvel show has to have a meme. Oh, boy. I don't know how they're going to keep it up.
We'll see. Tune in next time for Loki.
Oh, boy.
See you in June.
Yeah.